Um, so let's get started. Welcome everyone to the Arts Council of Johnson County's Creative Conversation Series. This is a series that we post on our Facebook page and or you use through our Facebook Live. Today we are meeting with Andy Heise and Nick Petrella, and you guys are both with the Arts Entrepreneurship Podcast, Making Art Work. Did I get that right?
Perfect.
Yep. Awesome. Yay. And Andy, you teach at the Block School at UMKC, and you're also teaching at KCAI. And Nick, you are with the UMKC Conservatory.
Yes, that's right.
Okay. So how did we have someone with a business mind, with a music background, and someone who is a musician? How did you all come together? I mean, how did this podcast idea come together, and how did your relationship together start?
Sure. Yeah, our relationship began back in 2016. I had just moved to Kansas City to start working at the Block School. And in my previous job at Millikan University in Illinois, I had been teaching arts entrepreneurship. And that was one of the things that I was hired to help kind of create at UMKC and in Kansas City. So I just started kind of poking around and talking to people. I had met with an associate dean in the conservatory, and she's no longer at UMKC, but at the time she was like, I have just the person you need to talk to. And then I met Nick, who was working on a similar course right when we met.
Yeah, and it's kind of fun because he was alluding to Sabrina, who's now the dean at University of Oregon. She introduced us, and I had already gotten a course approved to go through the system and whatnot at UMKC, and so that's where we picked it up, and then we started working together teaching anchor courses, and from there it's really just kind of grown. And we'll hand it over to Andy to talk a little bit about the certificate, but before we talk about that, just mention that the idea of the podcast came back in January of 2020. So we were sitting around one day, and I said, you know, a lot of people write books. A lot of faculty members write books, and those are kind of static. Why don't we come up with a podcast? I listen to a lot of podcasts, and he said, okay. So went online and looked for podcast names. The first one I wanted wasn't available, but this one was, so I went and got it. Told Andy, I said, we have a podcast name and a web address, and so from there, it took us about 8 months to get ramped up, but we're on our, I think at the time of this recording, our 6th or 7th bi-weekly launch.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we were this close to writing a book. Thank goodness.
That's amazing. And
yeah.
So entrepreneurs and artists clearly have kind of a creative mindset. What are both of you, what are your creative backgrounds?
Go ahead, Andy.
Okay, so I'm a musician. I'm a bass player, upright bass player. I've played in bands and orchestras for as long as I can remember, starting back in, second grade or whatever. And even before then, every Christmas I would ask for a toy drum set. But quickly evolved from being a percussionist into a more sophisticated bass player. Nick's a percussionist. So the drummer and bass player jokes get thrown around pretty frequently between us. So anyways, my undergraduate was in music. Spent a lot of time. I focused mostly on the recording studio and commercial music, so like jazz and rock and that sort of stuff. And like I said, been playing in bands and orchestras up until March of 2020.
Yeah, and then my background, my undergraduate and graduate degrees are all in music ed and percussion performance. And originally I was going to play full-time and then teach full-time, but I've always liked those two aspects, but also business as well. And so in every stage of my life, there's always been those three aspects: business, performing, and teaching. I had this idea that to be a consummate musician, you need to know every aspect of your art. It's not enough to be able to play that drum. It's how and why does it make the sounds it makes, how to tune it, what do the plies look like. So really it's been I'd say 360 kind of encompassing, and then from there spiral out doing publishing, finding copyrights, going for a patent. So if I decide I want to do something, I just go and do it, and that's how we figure it out. It's not always successful, but it's always educational.
Right. And I feel that really speaks to the creative industries and even entrepreneurship itself, right? It's not always successful, but it's a learning process.
Yeah. Yeah, we typically don't have a bunch of money or resources sitting around available to us to do things. So we have to kind of bootstrap and figure out how to do it ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah. So who would you say is the target audience or your key audience for your podcast?
We've got a few. I think, the first one I think is students. So musicians, artists, even people that are just interested in the arts. Like, there's a lot of business people that have an interest in the arts industry. The music products industry is gigantic, and that's not one that, a traditional musician typically thinks about working in that industry. So our audience, like I said, when we created it, was first and foremost our students, recognizing that there's more people like them out there in the world, not just the ones that we have in our classes.
So yeah, so there are three. So the primary, like Andy was saying, would be students or anyone looking to pursue their passion in some aspect of the arts economy, whether it's an artist, a graphic artist, a musician, or maybe even someone who supplies artists. So someone in the music products industry or someone who makes easels for artists. The next step would be, or the next group of people would be maybe college students outside of UMKC or college programs if they want to use our content, because we're trying to get information, pull information from these interviewees that can be applied. And then finally, patrons who want to know what goes into making art. Yeah. One of the unintended consequences that we soon realized when we first started teaching together is that there are a lot more than artists taking our courses. I think, what was it, Andy, last year, 48 medical students?
Right, yeah, pre-med students, yeah.
Yeah. So in the 4 years, pushing 500 students. And the most important thing is those pre-med students and any non-artistic student, right? Although everybody will have discretionary income, disposable income, that demographic will likely have more. So if we can take an agrarian approach and build our audiences, I think that's going to bode well for the future.
Mm-hmm. And you had mentioned that your as of today, you have released 6 podcasts in your series. Is that correct?
Yep.
And for better or worse, to me it feels, with the pandemic, we've all been forced to pivot, that overused word, pivot, and think of new approaches to doing things, artists included, or arts professionals, creatives included. So it seems like your podcast is very timely in that sense. What topics have you guys covered in your 6 shows so far?
Sure. We've had a visual artist, a painter. We've had a percussionist, professional percussionist and educator. And we've had, who else? Help me out, Nick.
Let's see, Bobby Watson. He was our first one.
Yeah,
jazz musician. So, tie in Kansas City.
Yeah. The latest one was with more of the commercial music route, a singer and instrumentalist, Jamie Garner, who makes his living kind of in the country music world, but has a long history that's not just that. So the topics we cover, the main topics that we try to cover through the kind of the common thread between all of these different industries. The main point, I guess, that we're trying to drive home is there is no one path to being a successful artist, which is sort of the story that we uncover through all of these interviews with these artists.
Yeah, and you really hit the nail on the head about being timely. I think people are looking to find things to do, but also to learn. We're billing this as entertainment that educates, and going back to accessibility and awareness. One of the people we interviewed, Jamie Garner, who we just released on Monday, his episode, very small town in southern Illinois, and it's taken him all over the world. Music and the arts have taken him all over the world. So I think that students, young people need to know that you can do anything you want to do in the arts. And I think the more people they see doing it, they're going to have the confidence to do it.
Yeah, I like that. I think I would agree. I think the more that you can demonstrate to students or those who aspire to have some kind of creative practice or creative career to show that it is possible. It's not the easiest thing to do. It takes a lot of perseverance and a lot of kind of viewing problems, solving problems in different ways. But it's certainly doable. It's certainly possible to have a creative career that sustains you. You can pay your bills. You can go out to dinner. You can, have
That's
a roof
right.
over your head. That is 100% possible, and it's wonderful that we're in Kansas City and we have such a wealth of artists, practicing artists who are doing that. I know, in COVID times that is a struggle. I don't want to discount that at all, but
Sure.
we are rich with a lot of creative people here.
Yeah.
So what are you? I know you've kind of just started this. You're still still a fairly new endeavor.
Mhm.
What goals do you have for the podcast? What's your long-term vision for this?
Nick?
Well, we want to continue to grow the audience. I think that's first and foremost, but also to create an ecosystem. If you go on our website, artsentrepreneurshippodcast.com, and go to our blog, the initial blog post spells that out really quite succinctly. So again, it's about awareness, it's about accessibility, creating an ecosystem where those who want to be in the arts economy or support the arts economy can exchange ideas about creating and distributing art.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, that answer I lost my train of thought. So that was such a good answer, Nick.
Oh, thanks.
totally threw me off. I think those are all the list of the prescribed questions that I had to ask you guys.
Mm-hmm.
This sounds like a really interesting and again, a super timely project to take on as we're all trying to figure out how do we do what we do in 2021, where the norms and what we are used to are no longer an option for better.
Absolutely.
And we will, the Arts Council will be happy to share the website for your podcast. And of course, we'll post this all over our social media. Is there anything else that you wanted to add? Any other stories you wanted to tell from the work that you're doing?
The only thing I was thinking about is Sarah, when you were talking about all the great artists that we have in Kansas City, and then Nick talking about where we want to go with this. I think, sort of another thing that we're trying to do is help put Kansas City on the map, so to speak. I mean, it's already very much on the map, but we want to help get that message out, get that story about Kansas City as a place where artists can, do their thing.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe even more so now in the time of COVID. We're got a pretty good cost of living. So artists from the West Coast, East Coast, if you're looking for a new home, I think Kansas City would be a great place to come.
Agreed.
Yeah, and everybody's trying to do the same thing. I was just talking to friends in opera houses in different places, and they're all talking about streaming. And so COVID is a disruptor. And one of the arguments that we always give is that in every generation or two, there's always at least a disruptor or two that changes the way things occur. And COVID is that, much like the analogy I used the other day in a different meeting was desktop publishing. That was a major disruptor to the publishing industry. So it's much like what investing, if you look at what Vanguard did in the 1970s, right? It's no different. So it gives the authority to the broader swath of people. And in a way, that's what COVID's doing. So we are able to take what we do and interview people, Kansas City-based musicians and artists, for instance, and beam that out to the world. In less than 90 days, we've already had downloads from 14 countries outside of the U.S. So it's been really, really gratifying to see that, because we hope in some way that people are learning from that, from what we project.
Yeah, I would agree. I think, and I like your point too, Nick. I was just thinking, for all the hardships and struggles and, yucky crap that we're dealing with.
Yep.
What are some of the new creative ideas that are coming out of this? How are people, serving their audience or reaching their audience? How are they adjusting? How they do what they would have done before in a new and different way?
Absolutely.
And how will that impact us going forward?
Yeah.
It's it's the accessibility and the awareness. That's what it is. We interviewed Suze Ford, who you may know as an artist. I think, Andy, she's in Lee Summit.
Lee Summit, yeah.
So she has an online, she has a website, online presence, and I believe that's going very well now.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And that,
adapt.
that's the beauty. Even look at what we're doing right now, right?
Right, yeah.
You don't have to be in the same room and I can interview you guys. So,
That's
looking at not being beholden to a physical place or being in the same physical space together opens up a lot of doors.
Sure. Sure. I think if anybody else wants to learn more about it, if they could visit our website, and really, we just launched the blog a couple days ago, and we put our second blog post up, I think, a day or two ago. So, if you had interested students, I know from the Shooting Stars, I've heard them; they're fantastic. If they have ideas and comments, would love to hear them, because it's not about professionals, people that you see on television or whatever.
Right.
It's everybody. We want to be as accessible to everybody as we can.
Yeah, that's incredible, and we're happy to share that out with the students that we work with in high schools and their arts educators too, because I think this could be an incredible tool for them as they prepare for the next step.
Great.
Awesome. Well, I think we may have covered everything that we wanted to cover today, but don't let me stop you if you want to interject or say any famous last words before we sign off.
I don't know about famous last words, but I mean, we're nearby. You know how to reach us if you ever want to do this again. If you have a panel, if you have anybody that has questions, if they write in, and happy to come back.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Andy, and thank you, Nick. We appreciate you coming on and talking to us today about the work you're doing to support the creative economy here in Kansas City. And with that, I will sign off.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.